Thank you. Good evening. My name is Arthur Gasparo, Nantucket Airport Commission Chairman. Welcome to the August 9th, 2022 Airport Commission meeting. This open meeting is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. As a preliminary matter, permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mr. Buscarin?
Here.
Ms. Planzer?
Here.
Mr. Marks?
Here.
Thank you. And staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mr. Rafter?
Here.
Mr. Carberg?
Here.
Ms. Perales?
Here.
Ms. Spicova Nelson?
Here.
And Ms. Sansbury?
Here.
And I understand that there are no anticipated speakers on the agenda tonight. Though I do see we have Mr. Lasden. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, here.
Thank you. And for this meeting, we're convening by video conference via the Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. The meeting will be aired at a later time on the Town of Nantucket YouTube channel. Please note this meeting is being recorded and all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. Public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. We're now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I'll go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone, computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until I yield the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. After members have spoken, the chair will forward public comment to those members of the public who have joined via the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged by and speak through the chair. Members of the public wishing to participate in the meeting must use their full name for Zoom access. If full names are not used, people will not be allowed to participate in the discussion. The commission reserves the right to remove any member of the public from the meeting doesn't use a full name or acts inappropriately. Finally, each vote in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. And with that, we'll move on to item 2 of the to review and approve the agenda. Are there any questions, corrections, or comments with the agenda as posted and published? Hearing none, we'll consider that adopted by unanimous consent. Moving on to the draft minutes from our last meeting of July 12th, 2022. Are there any questions, comments, concerns regarding those minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve those, adopt and approve those minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second? Motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Planzer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We will next have to ratify the June 30th, July 20th, and August 3rd warrants. Are there any questions regarding those warrants? If not, is there a motion to ratify the 3 warrants?
So moved.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion been made and seconded. Hearing no further discussion, Ms. Planzer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin? Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. I will now move on to public comment. Is there anyone from the public who would like to make any comments? I don't see anybody in the participant list. I'll give it a minute. So we'll move on to pending leases and contracts set forth on Exhibit 1. I'll turn that over to Mr. Rafter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This has been updated too, and Boyana sent out the updated version. We got some last minute paperwork in. The first is an operating agreement with Wheels Up, $1,500 business fee to do some minor scheduled commuter service out of the FBO. Next is a lease amendment with the Hungry Minnow for some additional square footage and storage space. And the third one is a contract amendment with South Shore Generator. It's an increase of $1,500 in the contract that we had with them to supply some generator covers. There's an increase in the shipping that took place since we initiated that, and that's to cover the difference.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions on the pending lease amendment, and contract amendment? If not, is there a motion to adopt the agreement and the two amendments?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Ms. Blazer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Moving on to pending matters, we have the capital approval process home rule petition, Mr. Rafter.
Yes, as I reported last time, select board approved that. We just needed to get the documentation. Erica sent that over to Noah and he forwarded it on to Senator Sears' office. So hopefully that should get the home rule petition moving a little quicker.
Any
That's the only
questions
update I
from
have.
anybody on that item? Please keep us posted. Thanks.
Yep.
And next we have PFAS investigation update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have a activity report in your packet. There are no major updates from last month with 520 samples taken from 79 individual wells. As far as the task orders and the phase 2 status, the draft IRA status report is in progress. We're expecting a review draft next week. This month, in the next 7 to 10 days, Weston will be on site conducting a synoptic well level survey. That means they will measure all water level in all wells in a short period of time under the same hydrologic conditions. From an administrative standpoint, downgrading property status and potentially productive aquifer exclusion expansion filings are still scheduled for later this summer or this fall. And we should see a new or amended task order for fall sampling in the September-October commission meetings. For both the water service and water main projects, we're on punch list level items. The most visible of these is we will be, through RBO, patching the water main trench under Monahanset Road. We will conduct an asphalt patch according to town standards to complete that work. We're continuing to work on bottled water cessation logistics. There are just a couple of one-off items we're working through with Weston and the water distributors. Skyline Drive repaving and rehabilitation, the paving and restoration are complete. And the loaming has been completed, but it will not be seeded until September when the weather is a little cooler. For the water service policy, going back to last month, I'm sorry, for the easement question directed by the commission in the July meeting, airport staff reviewed access easements for the water main located on the perimeter road. We reviewed this with a number of stakeholders, including Comet Water Company, and established a process to proceed. I really want to recognize the effort from Mark Willett and his staff at Water Comet. To put it simply, the homeowner has been directed to contact Comet directly. We will work with Comet as they work through their established procedure, and our work will really be between Comet to coordinate access. As far as outreach, I reached out on the 3rd to 3 families over 3 separate tax lots regarding this process. They had expressed interest and updated them as to this process. For the water service policy, the commission had directed staff to review the policy and promote revisions. These are attached in the packet. The items to highlight are that this is an effort to accommodate comments made by residents who are not receiving airport-sponsored water connections and do not have the ability through a traditional public way to connect to the airport-sponsored water main. We are not necessarily distinguishing further in the policy between a group of residents who may be able to connect to the water main on airport property or whether they would wish to connect to the future town-sponsored main. All are considered the same category. And the policy gives a 1-year extension with the review within the purview of the commission. We do ask that the residents contact the commission directly, but for clarification, I wanted to offer that I have received written comment from Peter and Allison McKay, Leanne Baker, Nina Huber, and Adam and Emma Ross that I consider having passed through to the commission for previous correspondence for their approval. And that I do plan on reaching out, with the commission's assent to the remaining 3 households, just to make sure they are aware of the policy and aware of the process for requesting an extension. That would conclude my report. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Carberg. I think that kind of wrapped 2 agenda items together, but I think it's fine. They're related. But first, were there any questions related to the PFAS investigation update? Okay, hearing none, so we're just working through that. And then we have the water service policy review, which I think the commission would need to discuss and then vote to adopt if in fact this is where everybody is in agreement based on the discussion at the last meeting. Does anyone have any comments on the draft policy? Does anyone, I'll open it up. I see we do have a member of the public. Any comment on the draft policy? Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt the policy as drafted?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
So the motion's been made and seconded. Hearing no further discussion, Ms. Planzer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarant,
Aye.
Mr. Marks,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye as well. And thanks again, Mr. Carberg. And I do think the reach out that you suggested to the additional residents is a good idea. With that, we would move on to the next agenda item. I'll turn to you, Mr. Rafter, for the approval of the union contract. It's listed as pending. Is that resolved or still pending? You're muted.
I think there's an item before that. The grant.
Oh, I'm
signing.
sorry. Thank you. I appreciate, thanks. I missed that. The grant signing letter of authorization. So this is our annual letter to allow the chair to, or the vice chair to sign on behalf of the entire commission, contracts, grants, or other agreements totaling $50,000 or more pertaining to projects previously approved by the entire commission. Is there any discussion on that authorization? Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt the letter of authorization?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Hearing no further discussion. Ms. Planzer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarant?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you, Mr. Rafter. And now on to the next item. Was that still pending or are we ready to go there?
Yes, the agreement has been forwarded to the union for their signature. We wanted to get that completed before we send it to the commission. So we're just awaiting their signature, and then it'll be, as soon as we have that, we'll present it back to the commission for full execution.
Okay, thanks. And with that, we'll move on to the capital projects fiscal year 24 budget update. Mr. Rafter or Ms. Sansbury?
Thanks. I'll start. We presented this to town administration last week, and we're going to be scheduled, I believe, on the 18th to present to Capcom. So I just want to run through these with you. The first project is a runway 24 high-speed exit taxiway that will reduce the runway occupancy time for the aircraft that are landing on 24 and allow air traffic to get airplanes in more expeditiously. It's been in our master plan for quite a while, but it's been moved up in priority because of the closure of runway 1230. Next, we have a supplemental to the South Apron expansion. There were funds previously approved. This is for the full build out of the South Apron expansion. And then we have a perimeter road fence relocation. That's the area down along the beach where the erosion is getting extremely close to our perimeter road. We want to take some preventative actions. We have the permitting accomplished. You may recall that when we presented this to FAA and requested funding, they said, wait till it falls into the ocean. we didn't think that was a proper approach, so we've put in for that. We have a supplemental for terminal improvements. And you may recall we had put in last year for some terminal improvements at about, I think it was $8 million or so. And that was to address some functional areas, just to take care of some, not very major, but some minor things and improve the functionality of the terminal. However, since then, Washington has issued the bipartisan infrastructure legislation, the bill, and there is a pot of funding that is dedicated specifically to terminals for that. So we're going to look to not just put a Band-Aid on it, but do a little bit more of an improvement. And we've held a couple of meetings. Our consultant has come up with some alternatives, and we've picked that around. We're looking at the one alternative that ranges between 11 and $15 million total. I hopefully should have for the next meeting, I'll give you some concept drawings and ideas of what that exactly is, but essentially it's moving bag screening, I believe, into the basement. It's realigning the hold rooms and possibly filling in, I think it's filling in the courtyard area too. So that's what the terminal improvements consist of. Next is the Nobodere Farm Road development for the housing. This is for the construction. We had approved last year for the design and project manager. This is for, it's still programmed as 2 buildings with 2 side-by-side units with 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom. So it's a total of 10 bedrooms for the whole project. And if you look at, there is a detailed cost breakdown that we have in the packet for Capcom, but there's some additional costs because we have to bring in infrastructure for these units as well. And in regard to that project too, we had one firm submit a proposal that is under review right now. So that's moving ahead. EV charging infrastructure is just that. It's looking at the infrastructure and what is needed for a number of different areas of electric charging, from rental cars to tugs and ground equipment to actual aircraft. We have Beta Technologies, who is working with us on negotiating an agreement for a couple electric stations for their eVTOLs. Hertz has approached us for, to start looking into where they can charge vehicles. I think they just purchased some crazy number like 100,000 Teslas or something, I don't know. And then we have ground equipment and other related ground items. So this is to look at the infrastructure of what will be needed to provide the electricity in the charging stations. Next project for $96,000 is Jet A tank. It's a 4 above ground Jet A tanks that require painting. The next is a paint and bead and rubber removal project. It's an ongoing. We have this annually. It's a continuous maintenance project. You may recall the state used to fund this in years past, but we have to pick that up now. Then we have the next one, maintenance and equipment. It's 3 small pieces rolled into one. It's replacement of Airport 15, which is our mechanic or mobile mechanic vehicle, repainting of our parking lots, and replacement of some luggage carts, and that's a total of $110,000. And then the last one is electro tug replacement. That's for moving larger corporate aircraft and small commercial aircraft, and we would be looking to trade in 2 tugs towards the purchase of that. And then the last is for ARF tools and equipment and PFAS decontamination. We are going to be purchasing a fire truck, and the FAA will not allow us to buy all the equipment under the same grant, so we have to put in a separate grant for that. And we're also going to have to decontaminate our existing truck when a fluorine-free foam is available, and it's not just simply rinsing out the pipes or anything. We probably have to replace a lot of pumps and things of that nature. So that's a total of $392,000 for those 2 projects. All in all, overall, it's $45.5 million, of which 37.7 is projected to be AIP funded. So that's our FY24 capital request. I'll be glad to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rafter. Does anybody have any questions or wish to discuss any of the items on the list before they go to the capital program committee?
Yeah, when are we committed to supporting all of those projects? Some of them I'm less enthusiastic than,
This step is essentially taking it through the process to get to the town meeting for the appropriation. The time at which I guess the commission would have a final, pull the plug on it would be when we went to contract or to bid for any of these projects.
okay. Yeah, I'm not terribly excited about the South Apron expansion, but I'm sure we'll discuss that in the commission as time goes by.
I would say that, I mean, we've spent a lot of time over the years on the South Apron. I'm in that camp as well, but I think that the ship maybe has sailed on that, but I think we do have to have it. This is a good time to have a discussion on projects overall. If there is concern with the commission, with anything that we're gonna put forward. If you have something that you want to discuss. I mean, I think that's why this list is before us. I don't know that it would be, well, I think it's all open to discussion, but then we'll also need the input from Mr. Rafter and, ultimately the commission to decide completely, but.
Yeah, I don't know when we want to come to a decision on this, but I think Arthur and I and maybe others feel that pushing the south ramp down in the direction of the houses that are in that direction is probably not a good public policy, but I don't know what the timing of that discussion ought to be, but that's generally my feeling right now.
Oh, and we're going to be taking this to the FAA, who told us basically one group said we can't park airplanes on 1533 and the other group said we can't turn airplanes away. And now we're filling up both run-ups, so we're kind of in a bind of where do we put these airplanes. So I think we can have further discussion on this, and certainly, Tony, a good place would be through our master plan update. That would be a very good place for this discussion, I think.
Okay,
I asked Mr. Lasden to pass that on to his planning group.
thanks, Tom.
Mr. Marks?
Yeah, I just had a question about the EV charging stuff. Is that just for design work? $1.2 million?
It's
And
for
then
the
the rest of like rental car guys, why aren't they paying for their own upgrades? If they-
rental cars pay us what's called a CFC, which totals between 300,000 and 400,000 a year. So that would be applied to it. So indirectly, they would be paying for theirs. This is for the infrastructure to look at all of it and see what would be necessary.
Again, so this is just for like looking at the infrastructure and design work. No, nothing's going to get built out of this $1.2 million.
I don't believe that's anticipated now. I'd have to double check. I don't think it includes any transformers.
Wow. Okay. Just seems like a lot for design work. Sorry.
I'll add in here. That was the one item that I also raised, and I will raise a concern. I think that as we look at the list and the wants versus the needs out of what I see here, and the fact that it's 100% locally funded, if there was something that I wouldn't necessarily be in favor of, that would be the one personally. But and so, Mr. Rafter, I guess to you, is given that there's such a big number this year in terms of airport share because of the projects, primarily, I think when you look at this list related to, the housing, right, that makes up a big bulk of it. And it comes in at, say, 20% of that cost is, would it be wise to bump the EV out to a future year, I guess? And
I would say no, and I'll tell you why. One, the Senate just introduced a bill for airport resiliency, which includes funding for these type of projects. And the other is, again, we've got to have the money ready if the funds become available. The other is the state has put out, I don't believe it's a specific requirement, but it's pretty close to a regulation that anything under, I believe it's 7,000 pounds or something vehicle that is purchased through ASMP grants is to be electric. And the town has also encouraged us, obviously, to go with electric vehicles. So we're kind of being pushed into electric vehicles for our own operation. As I said, the rental cars have a significant fleet coming, and Beta Technologies wants to negotiate an agreement where they'll put in the charging stations, but then, we're going to have to determine what the infrastructure need is from the airport side. So they may put in the transformer and the charging station, but we've got to look at where, what is the demand and how's it going to be allocated? Because it goes all the way back even further to the whole capacity for, from National Grid on the island. So, but I would encourage you to keep it in here, because if we, again, remember, this won't be approved until May or June of 24. So at earliest, we're almost a year away from even thinking of starting something with this project. So we're trying to look out at least a year, and a year from now, I think you're going to see a lot of electric demand. And like I said, there's this new legislation that's being proposed, or it's been introduced in the Senate for the resiliency that could give us the funding for it. I mean, we're not going to go spending this money just on a whim. There's going to have to be some agreement with somebody that says, yeah, here's what we're going to do and how the payback's going to work, and so on and so forth.
I appreciate that. I also understand once these things make lists that are approved and start rolling forward, they, if we're not behind it as a commission, I'm not saying we're not, I appreciate the discussion. I'm also trying to weigh how much, and maybe it's something as part of the cap prompt, the same questions come up, if they come up at the capital program committee, and if there's going to be a revision, we're going to come back to the commission. If something has to go there, then that might also be what we agree is the lowest need for that particular year.
I understand that, and I could agree. If this was a process that we were putting in for funding for the next 4 to 6 months, I'd say, okay, fine. But we're talking about at least a year, and then the process starts, which is probably another year. So we're looking at 2 years now before anything can even be thought about or said that, yes, put electric here and here, where there's going to be enough demand or enough supply, or there isn't, and you're going to have to do X, Y, and Z. We're a year behind the 8 ball right now from start. So I understand it could be the lowest priority, and I think probably get different feedback from Capcom, so we'll see.
And when you say it's not going to be approved until 23, talking about approved through what process or what?
The town meeting.
Okay, my town meeting. Okay.
This is the beginning of FY24 budget process. So the earliest, even if everything went smooth and we got all this money, the earliest we could start spending it would be July 23.
1 year.
Mm-hmm.
So 11 months from right now.
Yeah.
My question really, is there any more information about how that's going to be spent? I guess that was my question. It just seems like a big number to set up our charging stations, to get a plan to do it, having done it already myself, that's all. And I'm not trying to say that it's easy. I'm just curious, maybe if there's a little bit more information that would make it easier to understand, the cost there. It just seems like a whole lot of money to get for just.
I understand.
That's all. And if you have something, I'm happy to come in and check it out. That's kind of why I prompted. It just seemed like a lot. That's,
Yeah, we can send you the detailed packet with the information that's in there.
thank you.
Thank you. I think it was a good discussion to have. There was one that jumped out at me as well. Are there any further discussion on the capital projects for fiscal year 24? Is there a motion to adopt, or Mr. Rafter, do we need action on this?
I don't know if you adopt this formally or not. I'm not sure it was.
I don't
done
think
years
we
past.
typically do.
No.
Are there any other comments? Okay, so hearing none, I think it's a more informational, and ultimately it would be part of whatever we formally adopt for going to town meeting, I think. Because this could be subject to revision and further discussion through the committee process over the next couple of months.
Through committee, through the FAA,
Right.
all of that.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
If there's nothing further on that, Mr. Rafter, we'll move on to the fourth quarter report.
Yes, and I apologize. I don't have that in front of me, and I didn't get the hard copy before I left. Is there any way you can share your screen with
Yeah.
that, Arthur?
Oh, I got it right there.
Yeah, just on the summary tab.
Right there.
That one, yeah. Again, so you can see our revenues for 22 were 24.5 million, 21 there 15.7, and our budget was 17.1 against expenses of 15.4 million for our net earnings of 9.1 million. Some of this too is still attributed to some grant funding that we've been receiving, or we received last year through the CARES Act. So again, once you apply the ins and outs, our net earnings were 6.9 million over 6.5 last year. And then if you bring in the retained earnings as of July 1 of 21 at 7.2 million, take everything out, our fund balance at the end of last fiscal year is estimated to be about $7.1 million. So all in all, we're still in a good position. We recovered very well, and the CARES Act money was very helpful to us. So financially, we're still in pretty good condition right now. Any questions or anything details you'd like to know?
I don't have any, commissioners.
Yeah, I just had one question. The CARES Act money, so that was obviously from COVID. And how do you show that effect here? I apologize if I'm just not seeing it. So like what would we have made without it versus with it? Do you have that here at all, or?
I'm going to turn to Jamie if she's still with us here.
I thought I saw that.
So in the financial highlights, the CARES Act money was reflected in payroll. So basically payroll expense here was actually a little bit lower both years than it truly would have been had we paid it all out of operating. And I put a quick summary of what that was, what we received in CARES Act funding for payroll in the financial highlights, which is page 3. So true payroll expenses
Right
year
there.
to year at the very bottom.
Yeah.
The difference was only like $400,000 year over year, comparing fiscal 22 to fiscal 21 because of the CARES Act.
Okay.
So we got back 3.4 in fiscal 21, and we got 2.8 or 2.1 back in fiscal 22. And the CARES Act funding has been exhausted now. So next year we won't have any for payroll.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that. Thanks.
Does anyone else have any further questions on the operating budget? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the manager's report.
Okay, we discussed the housing project a little earlier. We're in the process of selecting the architect or reviewing their proposal. The Hagedorn Aviation hangar is moving along well. I believe they're still anticipated to be completed by the end of the month. We have two folks that have expressed interest in developing additional hangars, and we're working with them. The terminal optimization project I discussed a little bit in the Capitol earlier. We had a meeting on the 25th. We're going to be refining those alternatives or the selected alternative. The HVAC controls project is underway. Completion is by the end of September. I'm going to go off track a little bit here, but we are expecting a heat wave again, I guess, this weekend. NOAA has done some tremendous quick work to get a couple of units in there by Friday, and also some operational changes that we're going to be, hopefully, we can work with our tenants to improve the condition in there for the air conditioning. Taxiway Golf, we're still waiting on the grant for that. The master plan update, we completed the second IFE. Negotiations were held and record negotiations were sent to FAA. They have accepted them. Non-standard geometry, we're working with a number of internal documents, getting together with the tower and some other information. On the bid RFP status, the maintenance contract for the security system is out and the proposals are due on the 15th. We're still working with the OPM to better define the terminal project and the housing so that they can prepare a price proposal. And Sun Island Road RFP proposals are due in on the 17th. On the operational side of the house, you may have, I'm sure you've heard, and NOAA did an excellent job keeping everyone in the loop on the communication. We had a challenge with fuel supply. The steamship had an issue with one of their boats, and then after that was repaired, then there was an issue with the where we get the fuel at the depot. That had a problem, and then after they got that and they got everything squared away there, then when the trucks had a problem, so it was very challenging, and we did have to go into some restrictions. But again, I want to thank NOAA and Steamship and our provider, World Fuel. They did a great job working together and got us back on track, and we should have sufficient fuel now, hopefully through the rest of the summer. There's another item, the TNC or the Uber Lyft type vehicles. Apparently there's a bill that is on the governor's desk that should give some parity to for the taxi cabs with the TNCs, where we'll be able to hopefully put in some fees for them. I mentioned earlier, NOAA's working on the issue of the heat and some other congestion issues in the terminal, but we're hoping to have those units in by Friday. There'll be a technical advisory committee meeting. No, I believe that's for the 18th, if I'm not mistaken. And staff is working on coordinating some parking for 2 P51s and a DC3 that are scheduled to do a flyover for the POPs. Statistics, a very quick summary. Boston market was flat, Charlotte was up slightly, Washington National was up 52%, Newark was up 23%, Dulles was down about 904 passengers, JFK was up 28%, LaGuardia, Delta was up about 1,940 passengers, Philadelphia was down 26%, Chicago up 155%, and overall Hyannis market is down 45%. And I will just reiterate, because people couldn't believe it at this conference when I told them about our service, but for our seasonal service, it's phenomenal quality. We have connectivity through 8 major hubs, nonstop service to it, so it's great stuff. The jet fuel sales for June were down 5.7%. Year to date, they're still up 25.7%. And for July, they're down about 2.5%. Avgas is down 34.7% June over June and up 2.2% year to date. And July, they're down 31%. Freight was down 50% over last June and noise complaints are down from 26 to 15. The only other comment I have under my report is in personnel. We are facing some critical demand. We have some illness, COVID, and a number of seasonals returning back to school within the next week. So we're juggling, and Noah and Preston, Skylar have been doing a great job with that too. That's
Thank you,
my
Mr.
report.
Rafter. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Rafter or comments? Thanks for your efforts, and certainly good luck this weekend and maybe the next one, but certainly I think this one's going to be a challenge. So probably tax a lot of folks on both sides. Hopefully goes as well as possible. With that, we'll move on to commissioners' comments and commissioner comments. Okay, hearing none, we'll move us on to public comment. I see we do have a member of the public. A comment? If not, we will entertain a motion to go into executive session per General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A, to review the executive session minutes enumerated on the agenda for possible release. Clause 3, discuss strategy with respect to pursuing legal claims against PFAS manufacturers, where the chair has determined an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on litigating position of the Airport Commission. And clause 2, conduct strategy sessions in preparation for contract negotiations with non-union personnel, including the airport manager. Is there such a motion not to return to open session?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
No further discussion. Ms. Planster, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you all.
Hi, Mr. Hines. Good to see you.
Hi, Paul.